The Wii was a good console. I don't care what the haters say. The new integration of motion controls may not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's undeniably one of the biggest reasons the console managed to sell over 100 million copies, as well as an onslaught of crappy licensed games. Although I do consider Nintendo's 7th generation console to be a step down from the GameCube, there's no denying it has some really good games. More than enough to make a top 10 list out of them. I'll be judging these games mostly on the gameplay itself, not the story, graphics, or anything like that. It all comes down to which ones I had the most fun with. The only rules are no ports, no virtual console releases, and only games I've played. I'd also like to note that Twilight Princess won't be on this list because I've only played the GameCube version of it. So without further ado, let's just get started.
We would like to play.
Over the years, Spyro the Dragon has seemed to grow in popularity, and has gained a fan base full of people who say that everything is crap except for the ones on the PlayStation. However, there are many others who think that there have been some good Spyro games after the 5th generation of consoles, yet very few Spyro fans care for its most successful sub-series, Skylanders. Now I know what you're thinking, Skylanders, the game sucks because they ruined my childhood. And I can see where you're coming from. I like the first Skylanders, but it did have some major flaws that kept people from playing it at all. The ability to buy a ton of Skylanders and breeze through the game without coming across any sort of challenge is stupid. I'll openly admit that. And even though the first Skylanders was nowhere near a masterpiece, the sequel, Skylanders Giants, is a huge improvement in my opinion. The level design is infinitely better, the enemies are a lot less generic, and there are 4 difficulty levels, so if you find it too easy you can play it in hard or nightmare mode. However, the difficulty levels can also be seen as a flaw, as the developers are too lazy to give enemies more complex attack patterns on hardened modes, which would actually make them a threat, so they just give them more HP and attack power. Once you know all their attacks, you won't come across much difficulty. Just hammer away at them for a while until they finally die. Kinda sounds like the bosses in Super Mario RPG. Also, the Juggernauts can kill you in 2 or 3 hits on Nightmare mode, even when you're fully leveled. That's not challenge, it's just being cheap. But the level design is so good, and the arena battles are so much fun. The final boss is awesome, the secret areas are a lot of fun, most of the puzzles are at least decent, the combat is a lot better than the first game, which just felt like a button masher at times, chaos is still awesome, etc. This game may not be for everybody, but if you can look past your nostalgia, you might just find a really good game. It feels like they wanted to make a good game, rather than a way to get kids to fork out their parents' hard-earned money. It feels like they actually freaking care about the quality of their product. Good job, Activision, you actually did something right.
We would like to play.
The Mario Kart series is one that has had a pretty good track record so far, and it only seems to be getting better. Other than Super Circuit, every single game in the series seems to get a fair amount of praise, with many considering 7 and 8 to be the best, myself included. Number 9 on this list is probably the most famous game in the series, but also the one that has gotten quite a bit of hate over the years. Probably my favorite aspect of this game is how there are 4 different control schemes for it. You can either use the wheel thingy, the Wii Remote and Nunchuck, the classic controller, and even the GameCube controller, kinda like in Brawl, except using the Wii Remote is actually comfortable. Anyways, Mario Kart Wii contains some of the best tracks in the series, including Mushroom Gorge and Coconut Mall. Even the haters of the game admit that the tracks are really good. They even brought back some tracks from the previous games, like Delfino Square and Sherbert Island. They also added some new items, like the Mega Mushroom and the Power Block. Personally, I don't see why people consider this the worst game in the series. Don't like motion controls? Play with a GameCube controller. Don't like new tracks or just blinded by nostalgia? Fine, play the other stages. I really don't see the problem here. I know that everyone has their own opinion, but I've never seen any valid complaints. I do have a few nitpicks with MK Wii. It's not a perfect game, for example, Waluigi Pinball and Toad Turnpike were excluded from the retro stages, but there's nothing here that makes me go zong, this game is crap. Anyways, Mario Kart Wii may not be the best in the series by any means, in my opinion anyway, but it's definitely one of my favorite Wii games. The only other thing I can say on the matter is that there's a reason it sold 34 million copies, and it's definitely a baby daisy.
We would like to play.
Many of my subscribers have already watched some of my LEGO Indiana Jones Let's Play, and because of how much fun I've been having with it, you'd expect it to be somewhere on the list, right? Wrong. The sequel, though, that's another story. My main problem with the first game was that the puzzles were too simple. Well, in the second game, they're slightly less simple. However, this time around, they focus more on action than on puzzle solving. If this was a game like Zelda, this would be awful, but here it's kind of needed. The puzzles in LEGO Indiana Jones were very easy, and most weren't as fun to solve as in Zelda. And it did get somewhat repetitive after a while. In LEGO Indiana Jones 2, there's 6 different quote-unquote worlds in the game. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, The Last Crusade, and for some reason they chose Kingdom of the Crystal Skull to give 3 entire worlds dedicated to it. I'm one of the few people who actually like that movie, but I certainly think that there are other movies in the series that deserve 3 parts more. And the Temple of Mediocre Writing certainly isn't one of them. Anyways, each world has 1 level where you battle a ton of enemies, 2 puzzle solving levels, 1 vehicle level, and 1 boss level. And let me tell you, the vehicle levels are easily the best parts of the game. They're just so chaotic and fun that you want to play them over and over again. The battle levels are also really fun. Something about fighting off swarms of enemies is just appealing to me. It's kind of like the arena in Kirby, except way easier. The puzzles aren't Zelda worthy, but they are an improvement from the first game. The bosses, they kinda suck actually. Okay, they really suck. They're way too easy. I mean, I know it's a Lego game, but come on, man. Okay, the final boss is actually decent, but it's nowhere near a challenge. Then again, what do you expect from a game where you can't die? Overall though, LEGO Indiana Jones 2 is one of those games that I think is fun in a mindless kind of way. It's kind of like the Temple of Doom now that I think about it. Except LEGO Indiana Jones 2 is good.
We would like to play.
Oh my god, Kirby! Sorry about that, but seriously, Kirby is one of my favorite video game franchises of all time, and this won't be the last time we'll be seeing the pink puffball on this list. Kirby's Epic Yarn is among the most controversial games in the series, due to the fact that it had been a long time since Kirby 64, the last traditional game we had been given at the time. People were starting to get impatient. Luckily though, Kirby's Epic Yarn proved itself to be more than worthy of being called a Kirby game. Copy abilities are now gone, and Kirby is instead forced to attack with a strand of yarn. He can also turn into a frickin' robot. That might be worth mentioning. Anyways, like the LEGO games, when you die you instantly come back to life. So getting a game over is no longer a possibility. This has led many to believe that it's way too easy, and thus not worth playing. I will say though that there are some moments where the game will force you to partake in some tricky platforming, and if you fall off, you'll have to start that segment of the level all over. You also lose money when you get hurt, which can make it rather tricky to 100% of times. Plus, if the game is fun, it doesn't matter. And although it's not my favorite Kirby game, it certainly is fun. The bosses kind of suck, but they're really good for a game where it's impossible to lose. Certainly better than the LEGO game bosses. The art style is great, and Square Nintendo put a lot of effort into making sure that every single stage makes you feel like you're in a world made out of yarn. The music also supports this, and usually matches the theme of the level itself. So, if you haven't played this game just because the concept sounds stupid or because you can't die, give it a chance. Not every game needs to be the spiritual successor to Battletoads in order to be good.
We would like to play.
New Super Mario Bros. For the DS was a great game. It was a modern take on classic Mario, and it worked really well. It was surprisingly challenging by modern Mario standards, and there were even some relatively frustrating moments. It was so successful that it got a sequel 3 years later, New Super Mario Bros. Wii. New Super Mario Bros. Wii is arguably the greatest 2D platformer the series has ever seen. The levels were fun and creative, you can play with up to 3 friends finally, and although it was significantly easier than its 2006 predecessor, there certainly was a fair challenge. They even brought back the Koopalings, and there actually were some creative fights with them. Some of which rank up with the best in the series. Many of you may remember my top 10 worst Mario bosses list, where I said that the Koopalings are now just being used as an excuse to not have to come up with a new boss. What many of you don't know is that I actually like the Koopalings in this game. They've just been used way too much lately and starting to get old. Speaking of bosses, the final boss of this game, Giant Bowser, is actually really good. It's not too hard, but it's a highlight of the series. The multiplayer is also some of the best I've ever seen. Sure, you can work together with your friends to overcome obstacles, or you can just throw them in the lava like I do. This is especially fun to do on stage 5-4, where you're riding on a huge wooden plank over poison water. Good times. You know what, screw you guys, I'm gonna go play some Mario Bros.
We would like to play.
And here's the big one, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a huge fan of Smash Bros., but this is my least favorite of the series. Not to say that I don't like it, if I didn't it wouldn't be on the list, but it feels like a huge step down from Melee. First off, the control scheme isn't as tight. It's still functional, of course, but it doesn't feel as natural as in the first 2 games. Second, the Subspace Emissary is lame. It's just a button masher. Unlike Melee's adventure mode, there isn't much skill required in order to beat it. Also, there should be split screen in multiplayer mode. I can't tell you how many times I've died because of the lack of split screen. It's hard to explain why, but battles on multiplayer can get really confusing. Third, online mode is terrible. Fourth, the final smashes are extremely unbalanced. Fox's final smash is pretty much an insta-kill on stages like Final Destination, and Princess Peach's can actually help your opponents. Some are fair, like Kirby's and Link's final smashes, but others are either too devastating or not devastating enough. And don't tell me that this was used to balance out the characters. Fox and Valkyr are the last characters who needed to be made stronger. However, this game has more going for it than some people give it credit for. First of all, the new stages are some of the best that the series has ever seen. My favorite new additions being the halberd and the pirate ship from Wind Waker. Also, the option to build stages was a brilliant idea. I just wish we had more to work with. There are tons of new characters were added, and Kirby's A-side mood was changed, thank God. I know it's just a personal thing, but I never got used to playing as Kirby in Melee. For the number of collectibles this time around is amazing. With all these trophies, stickers, music tracks, etc., trying to 100% this game must be pretty dang challenging. Tons of new characters have been added, such as Meta Knight, Sonic, Rob, and another Fox clone, are you kidding me? But I digress. Oh, and I don't even think I need to mention all the new items, game modes, and stage hazards. While some of Super Smash Bros. Brawl may seem like an absolute disaster, the rest of it does things better than any other game in the series. It may be my least favorite Smash game to date, but that's not saying very much, as it's still one of the best Wii games I've ever played.
We would like to play.
If there's one Zelda game that seems to have gotten a lot of hate lately, it's the CDI games. Wait, there are 3 of those. If there's one real Zelda game that seems to have gotten a lot of hate, it's Phantom Hourglass. Wait, Skyward Sword is number 4. I'm not gonna lie, Skyward Sword is a flawed game. There's too much filler. There are only 8 items for your inventory, which is minuscule compared to Twilight Princess. This guy has nothing to do, and Fi is probably the most annoying sidekick in video game history. But the bosses are probably the best in the series. The dungeons are amazing other than the first and third, which are just meh. The motion controls are far more functional than what they would have been if some other company had made this game, and are actually integrated well. The story is great. It's probably the second most challenging 3D Zelda game. The 3 provinces are designed extremely well. New ideas like the time shift stones are simply ingenious. I could go on and on. Skyward Sword is so much better than people give it credit for. However, the bosses aren't perfect. They give you way too many recovery hearts during some of these battles. I mean, if you can't beat Scaldera without having to heal this much, you wouldn't have beaten the Earth Temple. One of the reasons the final boss is so awesome is because you don't have any recovery hearts, so there's actually some form of a challenge. I also never found the fights against the imprisoned to be that bad. My least favorite boss in this game is actually Bilosite. He's too easy. Someone complained like this game is too linear. Yeah, remember all the exploration in your precious Twilight Princess? No? That's because there was none. At least in Skyward Sword you got the Sky Keep where you got to collect the 3 Triforce pieces in any order you wanted. The only other complaint I hear is that the soundtrack is weak. I like the music, but even if you don't, Super Metroid didn't exactly have that strong of a soundtrack either. A weak soundtrack is not a valid complaint. A lot of people defend Fi, saying that she at least had a personality. Well, she didn't show it until the very end of the game, and besides, you know who else had a personality? Porky from Mother 3. Having a personality does not make your character likable. With Navi and Tail, at least you can ignore them until they shut up, but Fi literally forces you to stop in your tracks so that you can listen to her state obvious facts about the current situation. Really, Fi? I didn't know I was low in health. Oh wait, yes I did, because I have eyes. At least she doesn't tell you how to solve the puzzles, which are easily the best part of the game. Seriously, some of the stuff in the later dungeons are more clever than anything I've ever seen in a Zelda game, which is saying a lot. It's where most of the challenge comes from. And even without that, the enemies feel like they actually have a chance of killing you, rather than just being pests like in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, partially because they do more than a quarter of a heart of damage. I'd say that Skyward Sword is probably my 3rd favorite Zelda game, even with all its flaws.
We would like to play.
When I played Super Mario Galaxy at number 5 on my top 10 Mario games list about a year ago, I wasn't saying that's not an amazing game. The level design is probably the most creative I've ever seen in a video game. I'm not kidding. I'm including both Galaxy 1 and 2 on here because I think that they're at about the exact same level of quality as each other, with Galaxy 1 having a slight advantage. Galaxy 2 had arguably the best and most interesting levels and also had a Yoshi, but the difficulty was dumbed down way too far. Both games have fantastic bosses, and each Galaxy feels unique from the others in some way, although I do wish they had more than 3 stars each to collect. I can't remember the names of too many of the game's galaxies, though I can remember every single location in 64 and Sunshine. Sure, there are less worlds to explore, but they feel much more memorable, and in turn you grow more attached to them. Galaxy 2 was the last game with a formula that even closely resembled Super Mario 64's. I love Super Mario 3D World, but I hope it's not the Wii U's only 3D Mario game, as I'd love to see a game where you return to a level for some reason rather than just because you missed a collectible or something like that. Some would argue that Super Mario Galaxy is too easy. While I do wish that the second one was more challenging, as it was a cakewalk for the most part, I feel like Galaxy 1 did have a decent challenge. Compared to the somewhat difficult Super Mario 64 and the occasionally teeth-grindingly frustrating Super Mario Sunshine, it's pretty easy, but as I said before, an easy game is not automatically bad because of its lack of challenge, so long as it doesn't get to the point where you actually feel bad for the bosses because you trounce them without so much effort, like Twilight Princess. What? Who said that? Oh yeah, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. Amazing games and easily some of the best in the franchise's history. They're a bit linear, maybe a bit easy, but they are definitely worth your time. Which begs the question, who will play Indiana Jones in his next movie? Oh wait, that has nothing to do with anything. Number 2.
We would like to play.
I've never really been that big of a fan of Rare. I like their work, just not that much. Except for GoldenEye, that game is awesome. Natalia, stop being dumb! As I was saying, Banjo-Kazooie? I'd rather play Super Mario 64. Diddy Kong Racing? Nah, I'll stick with Mario Kart 7. Donkey Kong Country? I scoffed you. Scoff. Scoff. Donkey Kong Country Returns. I love this game, I really do. It's in my top 10 all-time favorites, no question, but this game is so hard. I have owned Return since the year of its release, and after 3 years, I still have not yet beaten it. It may be hard, but it's hard in a fair way, which is why I keep coming back to it. I rarely feel like the game's cheap, or I lost unfairly, because when I die, it's because I screwed up, not because of some annoyingly placed enemy or some cheap trick. In fact, Donkey Kong Country Returns may very well be the hardest non-indie game of the 7th generation. Then again, I haven't played Dark Souls, and I don't care enough to. Anyways, I've heard that the difficulty is extremely dumbed down with 3DS version, but I own the Wii one, so... I know most people prefer the original trilogy, but whenever I'm playing those games, I go, yeah, I'd rather be playing Returns. I remember the first time I played this game in 2011, I didn't like it that much, but when I came back to it rather recently, I had a blast. People need to give Retro Studios some credit. As good as Rare did with the Donkey Kong Country series, I feel like Retro did it twice as good. And then some. The levels are some of the best I've ever seen. It's tough, but still fair. Multiplayer is awesome, the bosses rock, the minecart sections are actually really fun for the most part. Most of the new additions have changed the series for the better. I could keep talking about this game for hours, but you just won't understand until you play it yourself. Not if you're new to video games though. You'll get your butt kicked. You might want some experience before diving into this one. And Just Dance 2 don't count. Before I end the segment though, I'd like to mention the follow-up to this game, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I'm sorry, but this game blows all the others out of the water personally. My favorite Donkey Kong game, period. If I were to make a top 10 Wii U games list right now, Tropical Freeze would be number 1, easily. Then again, the console's only on its 3rd year. Now I'm going to do something I haven't done since last October. I'm going to recap. Number 10, Skylanders Giants. Number 9, Mario Kart Wii. Number 8, LEGO Indiana Jones 2. Number 7, Kirby's Epic Yarn. Number 6, New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Number 5, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Number 4, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Number 3, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. And number 2, Donkey Kong Country Returns.
We would like to play.
Who's everyone's favorite pink fictional character? Who's everyone's second favorite pink fictional character? That's right, I'm a girl of Kirby! As good as Epic Yarn was, in my opinion, it doesn't even hold a candle to Return to Dreamland, which I consider the greatest platforming game of all time. Some would argue that Return to Dreamland is too easy and doesn't deserve a spot on this list. Seriously, it's Kirby! The only game in the series that actually challenged me a lot was Kirby's Adventure for the NES. Return to Dreamland was the first standard Kirby console game in 10 years. The others were just spin-offs to keep the fans satisfied until they finally gave us what we wanted. Before this game, I never really thought about getting into the Kirby series until I got it for Christmas in 2011 and played for hours. The story is actually pretty good, the levels are far more fun than any game before, the bosses are awesome, I love the copy abilities, the multiplayer is some of the best I've ever seen, the controls are great, and they brought back the true arena. I honestly can't find a single major flaw in this game. I also like how each level has a certain amount of gears, giving it a lot of replayability. And unlike Super Mario Sunshine, 100%ing this game isn't tedious, and can actually be really fun. They even add super abilities, which may not have changed the series forever, but they are really fun to use, especially the sword one. There's also this part near the end where you get the sword and start slicing up a bunch of mini-bosses. Normally they take quite a few hits before they go down, but here, Goombas pose more of a threat. Yeah, take that, you stupid robot thing. Have a slice! This would have been more satisfying if the mini-bosses were actually hard, but it's still really fun. The game was so good that the latest Kirby game, Kirby Triple Deluxe, seems to be mimicking it. It feels like it's trying to top Return to Dreamland in every way possible, so that the fans can refer to it as the ultimate Kirby. For example, remember the mini-boss thing earlier? They had one of those in Triple Deluxe too, just with the Hypernova instead of the super abilities. But enough about that game, I'll be reviewing it in good time. The multiplayer in Return to Dreamland is one of its best parts. You can play with your friend, with your dog, or even those frickin' skeletons in Minecraft that jump in the lake during daytime at the most annoying places. Anyways, Kirby's Return to Dreamland is easily my favorite game for the Nintendo Wii, and I highly recommend it if you like platformers, or just Nintendo games in general. Heck, it's my favorite platforming game of all time, and definitely in my top 5 favorite games of all time. If this isn't in your collection, you are missing out. Anyways, next time I'll be counting down my top 10 games I'm most excited about for 2015.